Alright, we are recording. Yay for chapter 10 of Search for Spock. Um, yeah, I like this chapter. It's a lot of it though I don't need to make even notes on because of the action. It's just one of those funny things with action where I mean if it's written badly, I have notes to make. If it's doing well, then not so much. I mean sometimes, but not so much because it's action, it makes sense, and you kind of taking a single moment and describing it over pages even. That's just how action is. Sorry. But that's gonna be a little later. It starts well, it starts with the Enterprise trying to get to Genesis and all that. And trying to communicate with Grissom, but not getting anything back. One thing odd, when they actually get there and they're scanning, they don't pick up any wreckage or any indication of Grissom having been destroyed, which there should be something. But anyway, we also get back to Carol. She exists in the book! I'm sorry, but it's like once we got, what was it, chapter 4 where it started following the movie, she just vanished. Still don't know how she actually got back to Earth, if she was on the Firenze or if she was on the Enterprise and just no one ever talked to her or about her, but anyway. She... Oh man, it actually doesn't... I think it's the map that had been drawn for the Genesis Cave by Del March, and she has his address and is trying to find his family to give it to them. And she is following, it's like, this is a park. What the heck? And she kept looking, couldn't find it, so she finally went over to the Madisons, so Vance's family. Because it's like, hopefully they will know. But it is also a little uncomfortable for her because Vance was planning to take a vacation in the spring, at which time she would go with him to meet the parents. And it is also mentioned here that she was expecting them to be closer to her age because it does confirm Vance was only a few years older than David, so she would be either old enough or nearly old enough to be Vance's mother. But no, they are actually much older. She figures that they could be 20 years her senior, even. But still, as when talking with them, we get a lot more history on Del. Technically also on Vance, in a way, but... Del never did outgrow that joke, Aquila said to the mother. Terrence is the father. I thought I'd written the address down wrong, Carol said. Do you mean he meant people to go to the park? No, my dear. He meant people to think they'd written the address down wrong. Moving on a little bit. What you have to understand about Del, Terrence said, is that he made up nearly everything about himself. His name, his home, the relatives that only existed in a computer file, his background before he was 12, everything. He even mentions that he uses a voice synthesizer, so if anyone were to call for his family. But yeah, so we don't really get much background. It seems that he either was thrown out of a home or he just ran away from home. Was living in an abandoned house, but Vance had known him for about a year and apparently also knew what was going on, but wouldn't tell his parents. But at one point, Terrence got so pissed because, like, why is your son constantly in, like, dirty clothes? Like, why is he not being taken care of? So he figured, I'm going to march over there, confront his parents, and be like, you need to take, it's like, I will either start buying him new clothes for him, it's like, or I'll just take him home. Found out that, oh, he actually doesn't really have a home. Yep, we'll just, come on. So he was brought into their home, so he is very effectively Vance's brother then, foster brother. But it is even mentioned there because they wanted to legally adopt him, and Del was like, no, don't do that. Why? Because they'd have to get permission from the parents, and he just was completely, I don't want any contact with my family at all, the real family, so, yeah. But it does help explain why those two were so close. I mean, still, it would have made sense if they just were in the same neighborhood. I mean, very much the description of them in Wrath of Khan. It's been a while, but it almost, Bruno and Boots-ish, in that, yeah, they're just... Bruno and Boots I'm trying to remember how close in age they are. I think they're within a year, but it's just they were best friends growing up, and that just stuck. I mean, it's like you don't need this other story there, but it does explain how Carol can get so much information on Dell by visiting them. And she does also have some stuff to give them, and it is very difficult, but being with them does help her because she intended to meet them with Vance. And so him not being there makes it difficult, but the two of them are definitely very good people. I mean, she even describes it, walking to the home, it's clear this is a home that was filled with love, and that the home itself is also loved because it is the family home. And it even ends with, she's like, I need to go, and they're like, no, it's late, it's dark, you've got a long trip back, and we planned on you spending the night anyway. So, and it's one of those that wasn't like a no, don't go out there, it's not safe kind of things. It was a no, they actually did intend that. All right. I don't know if we will get more about hopefully we do, because technically there is the whole situation, David's death, which does come in this chapter. There's a situation with that, so maybe we'll get more with Carol by the end of the story. But still, nothing with Granny, nothing with Dan, and it's like, can we please? So we do get the before and after, more or less, of Spock going through Pon farr, which is fine. You don't need the details there. The people reading the book are people familiar with, and it's also true in the previous chapter, it was kind of explained what it was, but people reading the novelization would also be familiar with the television series. They know the episode of McIntyre. Anyway. She knelt beside him. She was not certain that anything she could do would ease his pain. They were not formally pledged, psychically linked. So this is, he's experiencing Pon farr, so he is in pain from that. And she does recognize that, in the whole, he could die, which is pointed out in a mock time. But I do appreciate this mention of them not being psychically linked, and so she's kind of wondering, whatever she's about to do, will it actually help? Or is that link necessary for it? Which definitely, it shouldn't be, but I don't, because just think about in a mock time, the pledged Vulcan to him said no and wanted Star, as I recall. And it's like, well, in theory, in 7 years, Spock would go through this again. He wouldn't necessarily have another Vulcan woman pledged to him psychically. I mean, it's one of those things where it doesn't make much sense how some of this would work practically, because it would seem that this is so important that they're always arranged marriages. So, I mean, would there have also been Vulcan women? Well, that's also true, though. At least in my version of how it works, the Vulcan women are not impacted in the same way. It's just happening to the Vulcan men, which in a way could also explain the psychic linking, that you want to do that so that it is both sexes are part of it, and not just like, oh, this is something that the men go through and the women don't, just look down on them or something. But if you link them, then it shares the responsibility, shares the burden on this species. It does make some sense to do that. Anyway, so we get that before, and then we get the after. And yeah, we don't need details with it. We really don't. And I appreciate that they didn't try. If this were in the motion picture, in that novelization with Vonda N, I could believe he would have at least started talking about it. He did a little bit with Decker and the Ilea probe. I mean, not much, but a little bit there. Anyway, the fever had broken, the compulsion had left him. He slept and he would live. She wondered if she had done him a kindness by saving his life. He was still completely vulnerable to the convulsions of Genesis, which would continue to torture him. She sighed. She had done what she thought was right. And by the way, I did neglect to read here. she doesn't. He doesn't understand when she does say, it's called Panvar. Will you trust me, my mentor, my friend? I know it is no longer you, she thought, but I will help you if I can because of who you used to be. Which there were one of two ways it could have gone. And I mentioned this in one of the previous chapters, I think in the previous one, that either she would have some emotional connection to Spock, which is like, that seemed unlikely, but some people would write it that way. But this is this is just fulfilling the need, fulfilling the function here. Because, she does still have a love for him, but not in that way, that she will do this because it will save his life. And she does have such care for Spock. Okay. I just need to check my notes to know. By the way, this is, especially once we get to the Klingons. Actually, yeah, I'm liking Saavik. She is much more book Saavik here, even though some of it. Here, actually, right here. Saavik rose to her feet very slowly, her rage so great she trembled. So this is, Klingons have captured her and Spock, have dragged them out, and Krug is now there. And she also, David, she sees, has been injured as well. So she is not happy. But, so that's why, her rage is building up. My lord, she said, her voice was so calm, so cold that it astonished her. We are survivors of a doomed expedition. This planet will destroy itself in hours. The Genesis experiment is a failure. So that line, I think it is specifically in the movie. Like, even word for word, some of it might not be. But I think it is largely word for word in there. And it's just kind of funny how, yes, in the movie, it is that calm, cold, so calm and so cold it astonished her. We don't get the line because she isn't portrayed that way, about she's trembling with rage and not able to express it, to let it out. So, moving on. Krug doesn't really care, doesn't really respond to her. The Enterprise arrives, which David and Saavik are feeling better about that. Krug beams up. And it actually mentions in here that they would not have even noticed that the bird of prey was there because it was cloaked, if not for the beaming. That caused just enough of a change that Chekhov, looking at the scanners, noticed something's off here. There's some sort of energy field. Could we try to figure this out? And then they spotted the distortion. And we do have the whole, a lot of it goes exactly as what's in the movie, where Shields wasn't expecting to take us into battle. They do, the damage to the bird of prey does seem more severe in the book than the movie, which makes sense because you don't want to damage that model. It was a brand new model. It's the first time we see the bird of prey is in Search for Spock. But one thing interesting here, so they get hit. The bird of prey gets hit. And Krug had gotten thrown around, and Warrior Girl, his beast, which he had owned since he was a youth and Warrior Girl only a larva, lay dying. Ignoring the chaos of the damaged bridge, Krug stroked the spines of Warrior Girl's crest. His pet responded with a weak, whimpering growl, convulsed once and relaxed into death. Krug rose slowly, his hands clenched at his sides. Torg's voice barely penetrated the white waves of rage that pounded in his ears. Sir, the cloaking device is destroyed. Part of the reason why I highlighted that was they use it in Voyage Home. Sky's able to repair a Klingon cloaking device? Or is it just it's not that destroyed? I don't know. But I also highlighted because, okay, is this the moment where Krug turns? Where he's no longer just a Klingon trying to protect Klingon culture and the Klingon Empire. And it's like, okay, now he's going to be mean. Now he's going to be cruel. Actually, no. So they return fire. The Enterprise is largely disabled because of how damaged it is and all that. And he's very confused when Kirk is... the enemy commander wishes a truce to confer. A truce? Krug's training and better judgment restrained his wish to fire, provoke a response, and end the battle quickly and cleanly. Put him on screen, he said more calmly. Then to Torg, study him well. So even with his anger over losing his pet, his beloved pet, it still is a... He's got clarity on what he's supposed to do. So yeah, I definitely do... I appreciate that. Because it's... I'm just trying to think. It won't be until he's on the planet actually fighting Kirk directly that we might get another opportunity for him to break and not be this noble Klingon warrior. Because from Klingon culture, he is incredibly noble. It's actually very impressive. We'll see if he does break there or not. He might not, and you know what? I kind of hope not. Because it makes him such a more interesting character that he is not the bad guy. He is doing what he feels he must. And he's doing it in accord with his culture. And it's... I would only respect that. But he does also figure out the whole... the Enterprise must be in worse condition. Because it does even say that, yeah, the Constitution class is far and way more powerful than they are. There's no way this is we just need a truce here. And also, he even points out that Kirk would know that Klingons do not allow themselves to be taken prisoners, so why would you even suggest it? Hang on, there was just something I wanted to check on. It just oddly occurred to me, did it give the wrong ship class? I might not be able to find it. I also may have just misread it. And not, it... No, it is. The Klingon fighter was no match for a vessel of the Constellation class. It's the Constitution. The Enterprise is a Constitution class, not Constellation class. And technically it's a Constitution refit, which you would not name the Constellation. And it's also... Let me just check. Star Trek. The Constellation is an actual class. I'm just trying to remember what it is. Okay, yeah. That's, Oh, crap. It's a season 102 episode. Cause and effect. Okay. What? No, that's not right. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm just... No. That might be it. Yes, okay. Yes, episode 9, season 1 of TNG, The Battle. That is... Because it was Picard's old ship. The Constellation class, where it's like the saucer section that's very flat, no real curves to it, and then the four nacelles where it branches out vertically, and then there's four nacelles. That's the Constellation class, and and apparently it. The reason why I saw cause and effect is apparently you can see it appeared on a Starship mission assignment chart on the bridge of the Bozeman, which is the ship in that. But that wasn't a Constellation class. That was one of the various ships that looked a lot like the Reliant. Yeah, the Stargazer is... Okay, yeah. That the Stargazer is what the name of the ship that Picard had as his command prior to the Enterprise. Okay. But I think it would be... It could have been old enough to actually that class to exist at this time. But anyway, yeah, that's actually a fairly major issue that should not have been forgotten. It should have been caught. Very embarrassing. Anyway. Continuing with the Klingons being somewhat noble here, as Krug realizes he can dictate terms and is. It's the whole, I have 3 prisoners. To prove my sincerity, I shall have one of them killed now, and they will be killed one by one until Kirk surrenders. In this moment, yes, it is still David dies, jumping up to try to protect Saavik, but the behavior around it is radically different. The sergeant had been vastly impressed by his captain's offer of final honor to his gunner, and vastly horrified by the gunner's inability to accept the offer and carry out the deed. He recognized in Saavik a prideful being. As Krug had shown magnanimity to the gunner, the sergeant would show it to this young half-breed Vulcan. He would give her the chance to maintain her honor at her death. I really like this, that because as I was saying, the Klingons are not bad guys here. They're opposing the Federation, yes, but they're doing it still with a nobility and honor because they see it as necessary to protect the Klingons and the Klingon way. The Klingon way is also tending to be more violent, but it's their way, and not... I'm just trying to think of the best way to put it, because I don't want to say that, yes, their violence is good, but that it is not inherently inferior to the Federation. It is... because the way it's been presented here, they are far more ready to accept death than the Federation is. And so they have certain rights around it and honor associated with it that's like, I can't say that they are strictly bad guys. So yeah, and I like that because it does make them more interesting. They're not just the bad guys. Anyway, he drew his dagger. The toothed and recurved edges flashed in the piercing light of the sun. He raised it up. He offered it to her. So it's not behind the back ready to stab somebody. No. Saavik knew what he expected of her. She understood why he was doing it, and she even understood that it was meant as a courtesy. But she had never taken any oath to follow his rules. She raised her hands, preparing to grasp the ritual dagger. She could feel the attention of every member of the landing party. They were so fascinated, so impressed by their sergeant's tact and taste, that they had nearly forgotten their other captives. Saavik would take the knife, then lay about her with it, distract them, cry run to her friends, and hope they had the wit to take the chance she offered them. With any luck at all, she might escape too in the confusion, but that matter was quite secondary to her responsibility to David and to Spock. Which this very much aligns with what she had said in Wrath of Khan in Chapter 1, I think it was. It may have been Chapter 2, but Chapter 1 at the debriefing, the Kobayashi Maru debriefing, where it's like, nope, doesn't matter if it's a choice between any civilian at all and me. I'm a Starfleet officer, I'm dying, they're living. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter what they've done, they live, I die. That is her focus. She reached into herself to find the anger that had been building up for so long, the berserk rage that would give her a moment's invincibility. The fantastically recurved blade of the knife twisted in her vision. Her attention focused to a point as coherent and powerful as a laser. She touched the haft of the knife. "No!" David cried. He flung himself forward, breaking out of the inattentive hold, and plunged between Saavik and the sergeant. Yeah, he didn't understand what she was about to do. Well, maybe he did and figured, nope, I'm still not going to let her do it. Appropriate reaction from him, yes. Still a little stupid, though, because of the whole... Well, okay, her plan is also a little stupid. So it is mentioned earlier that when she tried to fight with them, that the bones were heavier and muscles thicker than she could handle. and maybe if there was only one, but there were three at the time, even though she is a Vulcan and far stronger than a human, Klingons are still also stronger, or at least male Klingons are stronger than she is. I don't know how Spock would necessarily, but even then he's a half-breed, so I don't know how Sarek. Let's just go with Sarek, since he would be a full-blooded Vulcan. I'm not sure how he would necessarily contend with a Klingon. But then also, what is said in "Take Me Out to the Holosuite"? I'm trying to remember the exact line where Sisko points out that, because that's where the crew of Deep Space Nine goes up against a completely Vulcan crew in a baseball game. The humans, and you've also got Atril and Ezri, who she does have the gymnast capability, but she's tiny. Kira would be able to fight for herself, but that doesn't, like in combat, but that doesn't mean she necessarily would be competent for sports here. So she's probably close to a human. Bashir has some capability, but that's more like enhanced reflexes, not necessarily enhanced strength. But then Worf, it's like, Worf is a little bit of an ace in the hole, but I'm trying to remember, is it stated that Worf is stronger than the Vulcans? I don't remember. But it could be. It could be that he is. Anyway. So the sergeant does react as he technically should, with David's lunging like that, stabs him. So he falls down. She pulls away and starts trying to help him, and apparently the Klingons are just watching this for now. David lies still. If she could just have a moment to help him, a moment to try to meld her consciousness with his, she could give him some of her strength, some of her ability at controlling the body. She knew she could keep him alive. And there's also David, stop fighting me, because what's explained is that the blade is designed such that trying to pull it out would do more damage, and he's like gripping to try to do that, and she's trying to stop him and trying to calm him down, because if he can be calmed, and also if he can learn to control his body through a mind meld, that may allow the bleeding to subside enough that he will survive. But yeah, and sorry, just going back. I realize I didn't finish explaining that point because I got off track with would a Vulcan, would she, even with her rage, really be able to compete with the Klingons? Maybe not. But it's like, to that degree, it may be a stupid plan as far as, yeah, you're not escaping. Would it buy enough time for those two to escape? David and Spock? Possibly, but remember the Klingons know how to track and have tricorders, so wouldn't last for long. I mean, it's not. She should still try to do what she can, but it would probably fail. Yeah, so she's not able to get to him. And she also does try screaming at them, "Help me," she cried to the landing party. "Don't you understand? You can never replicate Genesis without him." If any of them understood her, they did not believe her. Krug is the only one that's been shown to be able to speak Standard. All the rest have apparently just been speaking Klingon. And she doesn't know the dialect of Klingon, it even says. So he reached up, David. His hand was covered with blood. He touched her cheek. "I love you," he said, "and I wish..." Saavik had to bend down to hear him. His voice was so weak. "I wish we could have seen Vance's dragons." "Oh, David," Saavik whispered. "David, love, there are no dragons." I don't know. I get Saavik can't lie, but don't say that. I mean, it's like, I wish we could have seen the dragon. There aren't any dragons. It's like, that's really the last thing you want me to hear before I die? Really? 3 of the landing party dragged her from him. By the way, to be fair, it is actually very hard. This is just true with normal humans. It is very hard to restrain somebody. Like, it taking 3 people, yeah, that's not unreasonable. But Saavik's fury erupted without focus or plan. The madness took her. She flung herself backwards. Turning, she clamped her hands around the throat of the nearest of her captors. He gagged and choked and clawed at her hands. She perceived the blows and shouts, but they had no effect on her. She perceived the limpid hum of a phaser and felt the beam rake over her body. Her fingers tightened. The phaser whined at a higher pitch. Hands clawed at her, trying to break her grip, failing. The phaser howled yet a third time. The sound penetrated Savik's blue-white rage, searing her mind from cerebrum to spinal cord. She collapsed to the rocky ground and lost consciousness. By the way, the communicator was open, so Kirk has been hearing some of this. That is wildly different from the movie, and it's completely what I would expect for Book Savick here. To lose David like that, but it's also her rage has been building up, and she finally is letting go. And it's like takes 3 shots from a phaser, set to stun, obviously, to finally stop her. Yeah, I can totally believe that. Yep. I remember she felt that she could rip Kirk's liver out of his body if only she knew where it was. Yeah, I can very much believe that. So, hey, an actual short one, because that's I read to the end of the chapter. So yeah, I am pretty happy with it because Krug is still being a good character here. I'm definitely expecting that when I try writing up the written review for this, that he will be one of the main things I will talk about. It is a little unfortunate. I feel it's not as good as Wrath of Khan. The story's not been as good as Wrath of Khan, but definitely Krug is far more interesting in this than in the movie. And maybe also some with Savick. We'll see, because I do feel like Savick is at times not as much what I would expect from Book Savick. It's a little bit more just the Vulcan that we see in the movie, but it's still, you get moments like that, and it's like, good. That's it. I did see a little bit with the next chapter. Just scanning the first few lines that, yeah, we are back to Kirk. So him having some reaction to what has happened. All right. My guess would be the next chapter will end around the time of the Enterprise's destruction. Either it actually being destroyed or them just going through the plan that would lead to its destruction, but also the defeat of the Klingons that are there. What I'm most curious about is, will we see Krug turn? It might not be in this next chapter, maybe the one after. We'll find out. See you then.